Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Black Lotus. Let's get straight into the storyline. At the beginning of the film, we are taken to an opera house in Germany. The musicians and dancers there are practicing for a performance that they will later hold. However, suddenly, the building was entered by a terrorist group who immediately took them all hostage. Apparently, the terrorist group intends to ask for a ransom of $300 million from the owner of the opera team.
Why have these monsters
taken the National Opera hostage?
our goal of 300 million?
Shortly after that, a special forces team arrived that was assigned to take down the terrorist group and rescue the hostages. The special forces team was led by a captain named John and his deputy named Matteo. Here, John immediately assigned his troops to go inside, while he and Matteo would become snipers from the top of the building.
All right, let's rock and roll.
John and his team were already in their respective positions. However, John ordered that the attack not occur before his signal. Then, the terrorist leader contacted the opera owner to transfer the money immediately. However, because the opera owner asked for 20 minutes, the terrorist killed one of the female hostages there.
One last time.
Seeing this, Matteo, the vice captain, could no longer hold back his emotions and shot the terrorist without any orders from John.
You hear me? Stand down. Screw this!
Eventually, there was a battle between the terrorist group and the special forces.
Team Alpha, clear!
Although the special forces team managed to eliminate all the terrorists, John still scolded Matteo for not waiting for his signal. John was also shot in the chest, which resulted in him lying down. Seeing this, Matteo felt guilty and immediately apologized to John. When Matteo was daydreaming, suddenly, there was one terrorist who survived and immediately pointed at Matteo.
We saved everybody. No, you haven't saved anybody.
However, Matteo swiftly managed to paralyze him.
John!
However, Matteo had to lose John because too much blood came out of his wound. Matteo looked very sad because he had considered John like his own brother. The scene moves to 5 years later when Matteo decides to leave the military and become a carpenter. In the evening, Matteo returns to his rented house. There, he sees a photo of the late John with his wife and child. Matteo again feels guilty about John's death, especially since he had considered John like his own biological brother. There are so many memories with John, and Matteo is also familiar with John's wife, Helene. The next day, Matteo decided to stop working because he intended to visit Helene in the Netherlands. However, while collecting his salary, the supervisor cut Matteo's salary because he left before the contract expired. Matteo could only be patient, then he got on the bus to go to Helene's house.
Bucharest?
The scene switches to Interpol chief Shira and her colleague Fisher. They have just arrested 2 gangsters who have always been dealers in this city. When they were gathering the gangsters, suddenly, one person spoke disrespectfully to Fisher. As a result, Fisher gave him a punch to shut his mouth. On the other hand, we are introduced to a mafia boss named Sabin, who is currently being contacted by his right-hand man. Sabin received information that his gangsters had just been arrested by Interpol. Saban also asked his right-hand man to find out who Interpol had dared to arrest his men. Back to Fisher and Shira, who are now bring the person who was hit by him earlier. As it turns out, this person is only pretending to be a gangster, because he is an Interpol spy. Fisher asks the spy to frame Saban, the mafia boss who always covers the gangsters.
This was just a warm-up. Now we crank the heat, and we force him to make a mistake.
The scene moves to a stock boss named Paul. Paul is seen panicking because he just lost a $15 million trade. What makes Paul panic is that the money he has just used belongs to his client, Saban, the mafia boss. On the other hand, Mateo is seen arriving at the house of Helene, John's late wife. Helene immediately welcomes Mateo's arrival.
Where have you been?
While inside, Helene tells Mateo that she is now remarried. Mateo replies that he only came to apologize for causing John to die. This made Helene angry because she had just found out about it. Mateo could only apologize and then decided to leave.
It was my fault John died.
You don't get to do that.
It should have been me.
Shut up!
Sorry.
However, when outside, Helene chased Mateo and said that she had forgiven him because John's death was his destiny. Helene asked Mateo to temporarily stay at her place because she knew that Mateo had no place to stay. Finally, Mateo accepted Helene's offer. The scene moves to Saban, who is talking to his two right hands. Here, Saban asks them to arrest the person who had spied on the arrest of his gangsters yesterday.
We don't continue business until it's found.
Yeah.
Now, if it is in my house, it's up to you two to find it. Fast.
Back to Mateo, who is suddenly visited by Helene's new husband, Paul, the stock boss. Helene immediately introduces Paul to Mateo, and they eat together. In the evening, Mateo is seen daydreaming alone in the garden of Helene's house. Mateo remembers the time when he served with the late John. At that time, they were both assigned to be snipers to eliminate enemies from a distance. During the mission, John always talked about Helene, whom he loved very much. Not long after, Mateo's daydreaming is stopped by Paul, who suddenly comes in with a drink. Paul says it is better for Mateo to forget all the memories with John because it would only disturb his mind.
Talking to you. Good.
In the morning, Mateo is seen exercising again to keep his body fit. At noon, the scene moves to Paul, who is now in his office. Paul has a visitor who turns out to be Sabin, the mafia boss. Sabin immediately asks about his money, which suddenly disappeared, as much as $15 million. Paul pretends that there is a system malfunction, even though we know that Paul has used the money for stock trading. Paul promises to fix the system immediately and guarantees Sabin's money will return 100%. Sabin, who did not believe it, gave Paul a few days. If the money is not returned within that time, then Sabin will kill Paul and his family.
Good.
Back to Mateo, who is now going to clean Helene's warehouse. However, Helene forbids Mateo and instead invites him to go to the playground with her daughter.
You know what? Let's go out. Come.
Once there, Mateo is seen getting closer to Helene's daughter from John Angie. In the evening, Paul is seen confused about how to return Sabin's money soon. Helene approaches Paul and tries to ask what happened, but Paul chooses not to tell her because he is afraid that Helene will be angry if she finds out about his problem. The next day, on the bridge in the center of the city, many tourists and locals were enjoying the view by boat. However, the scene turns bad when there is a body on the boat. It turned out that the body was an Interpol spy who was killed by Sabin's two right hands. Not long after, Fisher and Shira arrived and immediately processed the crime scene. Here, Shira assumes that this is all Sabin's doing as a warning so that Interpol doesn't bother his gangsters anymore. Fisher also took the spy's mobile phone to look for evidence in it. On the other hand, Sabin again contacted Paul, asking for his money. Paul again excused that the IT team was still fixing the system. Saban reminded Paul that if the money was not returned, Paul's family would be at stake.
You just got to trust me.
Trust you. You know, trust me is what people say right before they sneak up behind you and they cut your fucking throat. My money.
Gabriel, I can fix this. I just need more time.
Okay.
The scene moves to Mateo, who is making a wooden table. Angie approaches Mateo and invites him to play. Angie is seen suddenly hugging Mateo because she thinks Mateo is more suitable to replace John as her father. Helene, who sees it from the window, can only smile at her daughter, who is getting closer to Mateo. Back to Paul, who is now contacting Sabin's right-hand man. Here, Paul tells the truth about Sabin's $15 million that he has spent. In exchange for the money, Paul allows Sabin's right-hand man to kidnap Angie, who is his stepdaughter, as long as their actions are not caught by Interpol. A few hours later, Mateo, Helene, and Angie are seen playing in the city park. At first, everything looks fine, but suddenly, a group of thugs attack Mateo. Apparently the thugs are Sabin's right-hand men. While Mateo was busy dealing with the thugs, Saban's right hand immediately kidnapped Angie. Seeing this, Mateo immediately chased Saban's right hand using a bicycle, while Helene immediately contacted Paul and asked for his help. Here, Paul pretends to panic and then says that he will come soon. Back to Mateo, who is now desperate to jump into Saban's right-hand man's car. When he wakes up, Mateo is already in the hospital with his right hand handcuffed. Helene and Paul are also seen being interrogated by Shira and Fisher. Here, Shira suspects Mateo of being involved in Angie's kidnapping. Shira has also learned that the mastermind behind all this is Saban, who has a child trafficking business. Hearing this, Mateo swears that he does not know Saban at all. How could he kidnap Angie, whom he considers his own daughter? Mateo then says that he is a former Special Forces vice captain with the late John, Angie's father. Now, Mateo asks Shira to let him go because tonight, he will hunt down Saban to save Angie. In the end, Shira believes him and says that Mateo can contact Interpol if he has problems. On the other hand, Saban and his right-hand man plan to give Angie to a syndicate in Thailand.
The association wants the syndicate's access to Thailand. We cannot lose that. Do you understand?
Before hunting down Saban, Mateo returns to Helene's house and accidentally sees Angie's drawing book. Here, Mateo remembers the late John, who once entrusted Angie to him. At that time, John asks Mateo to be Angie's godfather, which means that Mateo has to look after Angie if John dies. As Mateo is about to leave, Paul suddenly forbids him. Paul says that Saban is very dangerous because he is connected to Thai gangsters. Hearing this, Mateo begins to suspect that Paul is involved in this case. Immediately, Mateo interrogates Paul to tell him the truth. Frightened, Paul confesses that it was all because he had used Saban's $15 million. Hearing this, Helene was furious and immediately attacked Paul. Fortunately, Mateo managed to calm Helene down and told her that he had a plan to trap Saban. Mateo asked Paul to call Saban and tell him that he already had $15 million in exchange for Angie. Once connected, Saban agreed to the request. However, if Paul lied, then Saban would not hesitate to kill Angie. In the end, Saban gave the location of the meeting. After that, Paul gave the location to Mateo, because Mateo would go there, not Paul. On the other hand, Shira asks Fisher to keep Paul in his house because Shira already knows that Paul is involved in Angie's kidnapping case. Once there, Fisher immediately asked Helene about Paul's whereabouts. Helene replied that Paul was taking a shower upstairs, but in fact, Paul was packing his things as he was planning to escape. Back to Mateo, who has now arrived at the meeting location. Unfortunately, Saban does not arrive and only assigns his men to make the exchange. Mateo also realizes that Angie is not there, and Saban is just trying to set him up. In the end, Mateo gives him his bag, but the bag turns out to contain a bomb that immediately explodes. As a result of the explosion, Saban's men died, leaving only one person. Mateo immediately took that person for interrogation. With great cruelty, Mateo tortured Saban's men and asked about Angie's whereabouts. In the end, the man told him that Angie was in a Thai nightclub.
The red light district.
Hearing this, Mateo immediately leaves for the nightclub. The scene returns to Helene's house. Here, suddenly, Saban's second right hand comes and immediately attacks Fisher. The right hand is able to make Fisher helpless, then just leave. While Helene was stemming Fisher's blood, Paul casually left them. However, as he is about to enter the car, Saban's right hand is already there and immediately finishes Paul off. Shortly after, Shira arrives to help the dying Fisher. Quickly, Shira called the medical team, and Fisher was taken to the hospital. At the same time, Shira is suddenly contacted by Mateo, who asks for Interpol's help to arrest Saban and rescue Angie, who is being held in a Thai nightclub. Long story short, now Mateo arrives at the club and immediately beats all the guards there. Soon, Shira also comes to help Mateo. Sabin, realizing this, immediately ordered his two right hands to take Angie to escape through the back door. Mateo and Shira immediately chased until they had to face Saban's two right hands.
Come!
Finally, they managed to finish off Saban's two right hands. After that, Mateo went straight to the street to save Angie. Here, Saban pointed a gun at Angie and asked Mateo not to move. Saban did not realize that Mateo was carrying a knife. In the end, Saban was killed, although Mateo was also badly injured.
Let's go.
8 months later, we see Helen and Angie now living peacefully. They both miss Mateo, who now chooses to wander in the middle of the ocean.